Well, peace and blessings to you. Shabbat Shalom, each and every one of you. Very glad to be with you. Yes, we are dealing with a very interesting topic, very interesting subject. We've had a number of technical difficulties, but hey, that's okay. We're going to go ahead and we're going to get through it. I'm delighted that you are here, and we're going to have an excellent discussion. We're going to be talking about, believe it or not, we're asking the question of whether or not Paul was a Roman operative. You heard me correctly. Was Paul a Roman operative?
See, I have this day set thee over the nations and over the kingdoms, to root out and to pull down, to destroy and to throw down, to build and to plant.
Peace and blessings to you once again, my brothers and my sisters. We're delighted to be here with you. And yes, it's that time. We are here to magnify the Most High. Hallelujah. Baruch ataya o, ataya da she'anachnu ohavim b'kol halev. Baruch ata slikalanu, gam racham lanu ya'o ki ata el rachum. We give you praise, glory, and honor. We thank you. We bless you, we praise you, we ask that you would forgive us for sin and have mercy upon us because you are our Elohim of mercy. And so we thank you. Illuminate us, open up our minds, open up our hearts. Anachnu omer lifnecha ya'o she ha'aynaim gam ha'oznaim ham patokim lifnecha Baruch atah kol hayom. We say unto you that our eyes and our ears are open, even our hearts are open unto you. We thank you for what you give unto us. Aman and aman. All right, hey, we're going to invite your attention because you know what we're going to do. We're going to do a praise unto the Most High. And we're going to give shouts out, of course, after we do this. But you know what? We want to go ahead and we want to give some praise unto the Most High, and in doing so, we delight in Him. He is our strength. He is our salvation, and we exalt Him and we praise Him. We magnify Him. So I'm inviting your attention as I kind of work some things out. There we go. Inviting your attention to go with me to a particular psalm. Let me just adjust something real quick. We're going to go to a particular psalm here, and what we're going to do is we're going to go to Psalm 1 and 1. That's right, we're going to go to Psalm 1 and 1. I want to give you just a second to get your Tanakhs and to get your scriptures. What I'm going to do is I'm also, by the way, I'm kind of like doing 5 things at once here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get the scripture. However, just before I do that, I want to give you an opportunity. Perhaps you've got an edition of the Tanakh that you like to, read out of, that you like to, in this case, praise out of. Go ahead and get that. But what we're going to do right now is we're going to go ahead, we're going to start praising Him at Psalm 1. Haven't done this one in a while, but hey, here we go.
Blessed is man that walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful. But his delight is in the law of the Lord. Oh, blessed is the man that walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful. But his delight is in the law of the Lord. Yahweh, in His law does he meditate. In His law does he meditate day and night. We meditate on your law. In your law do we meditate. We meditate day and night. Blessed is the man that walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful. Oh, blessed is the man that walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful. But his delight is in the law of your own, and in his law does he meditate. In his law does he meditate day and night. In his law does he meditate day and night. We magnify you, Yah, on this Shabbat, oh Yah. We magnify you, love you.
All right, you got to lock it down right there. Got to lock it down right there. And you know what we're going to do? We're going to get into our lesson for today. Yes, we are. Yes, we are. But just before we do, you know what we got to do? We got to give some shouts out. And for those of you that are here with us, I want to say thank you. You know, I had something that I needed to attend to on last week. And thank you all for being understanding. And thank you very much. Giving a shout out to Joshua and Penny, Smoking in the Smokies. Peace and blessings unto you, my brother and my sister. High five, bam. Okay, also my brother George Evans. Yes. And thank you. I'm glad to be back. My brother George Evans says, you know what, glad you're back, Moray. You know, listen, I want to say this. I missed you all on last week. I really did. I missed you all, but I had something that I definitely needed to tend to, and I could not break out of it. It was just something that I had to do. Someone who was very close to me, there was a death in the family, and someone very close to me, who was like a father to me. My father died when I was very young, and so this individual was like a father to me, and I had to give honor unto whom honor was due. And so that did, of course, take me away from you all. But hey, peace and blessings to each and every one of you. I'm so glad to be back with you. Also giving a shout out to Jacqueline E. Bugs in the house. High five, bam. Jacqueline E. Bugs is in the house. Yeah, my day one is in the house. My brother Bergen Paris. Peace and blessings unto you, my brother. Double five for you, bam. I want to say, let's see here. We know that others are watching and may not. You know, I know. Some of you, you're afraid. Maybe you're afraid to be seen in the chat room, right? Maybe you're afraid for your name to be seen, even associating with me. But hey, don't be scared. A black man, peace and blessing. Shabbat shalom unto you, my brother. Yeah, Shabbat shalom unto you. And I think that's all that we have in the chat room thus far. We have an interesting subject, interesting topic that, listen, I would love to say that we're going to finish this. In fact, that is my goal for today, is to be able to finish this topic. And as always, you know that you can, for those of you that are watching that refuse to get into the chat room, please get into the chat room, because that is where you can place your comments as well as ask your questions. So, and thank you, my brother Joshua and Penny says, you know, we missed you too. Says that we're praying for you, hugs and blessings. Yes, big bear hugs and blessings, even to both of you. So long story short, you know, I want to say that we're going to be able to get through this, but I do want to entertain your questions and your comments. I'm sorry, I was pausing there for a second because I was reading the comment, right? I was reading the comment. You know, I want to say this. this is going to be an interesting topic because there are many who subscribe. Now, of course, we on this channel, we do not, you know that we are Yah only, you know that we are Torah only. And so for those that do subscribe to the New Testament, I imagine that there will be some taking issue with what we're about to talk about on today, simply because the individual that we're talking about is a major component of Christianity. In fact, I'm going to say that this individual, man, I'm crooked. Yeah, there we go. I straightened myself out. Good. Yeah, this individual is such a key component to the Christian New Testament. In fact, we're going to get into some things and we're going to talk about some subjects here on today that I feel are pertinent to getting an understanding as to who this individual is. Now, let me just say this before I begin. I feel like there is, how can I say it? There's some controversy that definitely surrounds this individual, okay? There is some controversy that definitely surrounds this individual, and I don't think that we can avoid that, right? I don't think that we can avoid that, okay? And in fact, okay, I'm sorry. I see the chat room. I need to straighten something out. Okay, remember how I told you that the Masoretes who put the Nakud above and beneath the Hebrew, the square script of the Hebrew that Ezra, of course, brought back from Babylon. I shared with you that in the Tetragrammaton, I don't even like saying that, but we're going to go ahead and just say Yod He Wav He, in that name that the Most High gives of himself, which of course I pronounce Yah-O. I've shared with you that they purposely put the wrong Nakud or the wrong vowels above and beneath the name of the Most High. Well, that is why they were trying to protect the pronunciation of the name of the Most High. I kind of did the same thing concerning my birthday. My birthday is this upcoming Thursday, the 13th. My brother Bergen Paris is definitely right. I put it on Facebook because there were people that were kind of like stealing information and doing some things that were, that were not correct. So I purposely put a different birthday on there. Because those who would try to manipulate and use our information, I did not want them to have my accurate information. So that's why I did that. But yes, it is this upcoming Thursday. And listen, I've done something that, I've never done before. I usually work on my birthday. Ain't doing it this time. No, sir. It's not going to happen this time. So let's go ahead and let's kind of get into the topic. Let's kind of get into the subject at hand. And we're going to come at this from a direction. Okay, we're going to come at this from a direction that is going to be interesting, okay? Listen, this is going to be an interesting subject, interesting topic. But not only that, it's also going to be done in a way that brings today into the scriptures. What do I mean by that? Well, let's do this first of all. I want to invite your attention to go with me, and we're going to go to Ecclesiastes. And we're going to begin at the first chapter, and we're going to go to the 9th verse. I want to show you something, and I want to reveal to you that this is, of course, once again, definitely true. Let's see. Okay, so the words are, I'm going to have to fix this real quick, fam. I don't like that the words are seemingly going off the page. So excuse me while I go ahead and fix this. Let me just do this really quickly. Okay, there we go. All right. So notice, if you will, verse number 9, the thing that has been is that which shall be. Now, that's a very important principle and truth for what we're going to talk about here today. The thing that has been, it is that which shall be, and that which is done is that which shall be done. And there is no new thing under the sun. Please keep that in mind. In principle, there is absolutely no new thing under the sun. It may happen again, just a different way, but it's still the same old thing. Like someone said, nothing has changed but the date. The same things that were going on in yesteryear are going on today. Well, in this particular time in which we live, many of us, especially those of us who have been labeled African American and now understand that we are Hebrews, we understand that back in the day, there was something called COINTELPRO, okay? There was something called COINTELPRO, and what COINTELPRO was where individuals were actually keeping an eye. They were keeping an eye on those groups that they felt would be, how can I say this, that were divisive and that were somehow a threat to the government. And so they decided that what they were going to do was that they were going to go ahead and not only just keep tabs on them. It's not anything as simple as keeping tabs, but their purpose was to subvert. Their purpose was to really destroy and neutralize. Their purpose was to gain information from them and to even put plants and operatives within their specific groups. And they wanted to go ahead and do this so that they could, again, neutralize them and basically eliminate any threat to the then governmental system. Well, now, with that being the truth, that actually happened. You had plants that were put in by J. Edgar Hoover. You had individuals that were actually planted into their different organizations. They were planted, and as we can see here, Elijah Malik El-Shabazz, Malcolm X in the upper left-hand corner, there were individuals that were actually working for the federal government and their organization. They had completely infiltrated the Nation of Islam. They infiltrated the movement of Dr. Martin Luther King, even funded and directed his movement. And also we know that in the civil rights movement itself, there were individuals that were planted, that were actually working for others. And in fact, for those of you that may not understand it, the whole civil rights movement had a completely different agenda altogether, which it's not the scope of this particular lesson on today. However, please keep in mind that when it comes to movements that have the ability to affect a given government, has the ability to affect a given nation, you better believe that the political power in play in that moment, that they are going to invest funds, they're going to invest their agencies, because they're going to keep themselves in power at all costs. And so this was what was happening back in 1956, the COINTELPRO actually, the program COINTELPRO actually began in 1956, and it was just a year after the Black Panther Party really started to make some headway, and they established themselves. And then so they found it necessary for them to create this program in the federal government in order to keep tabs on these and other groups. Now, the interesting thing about it is they also kept records on white supremacist groups, Marxist groups, communist groups, so forth and so on. But you see, one of the main groups that, of course, had to be stopped and had to be neutralized. In fact, J. Edgar Hoover said specifically, we have to prevent the rise of a black messiah. Now, how does that fit into our lesson? Well, it fits into our lesson because when you look at the scripture that we just shared with you, whatever has gone on, even in our most recent days, right? What's gone on in our most recent days are also those things that have also gone on in the past. It is impossible for us to consider that something has somehow taken place in the here and in the now, and that it has absolutely no historical background to it. It has absolutely no historical validity, when in all actuality, what we see and what we pay attention to, even in today, had its beginning even back in those days, in ancient days, even those days that we might call biblical times, what we call, like things that are happening right now. Listen, it has already been. These are things that have already taken place. And there is no need for us to wonder. There is no need for us to wonder about, well, is this new? No, I've already showed you the scripture. There is absolutely nothing new under the sun, right? I've already shared that with you. There is nothing new under the sun. And with that being the case, I simply want to say that what we see going on in our most recent day began actually in ancient times. Well, let me also interject this. Is it possible then that the same tactics that we see of this later rendition of Pax Romana, the Roman government, is it possible that everything that we see, is it possible that the precursors to that the beginning of that was even seen in the so-called biblical days, in the so-called first century, where, of course, the Christian New Testament was being penned? I would say to you, point blank, flat-footedly, emphatically, I would say yes. Definitely yes. And I say that mainly when it comes to the Apostle Paul, because as the COINTEL program has shown us and has revealed to us, it reveals to us once again what has taken place in the past. It shows us that there are basically governments who are interested in the activities of growing movements. And with that being the case, they then invest as much as they possibly can to get a handle on things and to maintain their power and their control. And this is what they have done, and this is what they continue to do. And so individuals are, in fact, I could even share some things with you concerning my own past and concerning my history, if you will, where I was running a group, and yes, it too was infiltrated. It was infiltrated by the local authorities, right? But a lot of the people that were with us at the time, they actually scoped things out, and they said, no, that is an undercover police officer, and one didn't work, then they sent another. Well, what I'm saying is this still goes on today. Now, with that being the case, let's then take a look then at the Apostle Paul. Let's take a look at the Apostle Paul, and let's get an understanding, if you will, about what it is that the Apostle Paul was doing, right? Who is he? And how is it that he could have the quote-unquote task of putting people in jail and basically persecuting the church? You got to ask yourself the question. And in fact, let's do this before I even start. Let's do this, okay? Let me give you a precursor that goes back into the beginning of the movement, the Messianic movement of the Yahudi back in the day. So as we take a look here, we're going to go to the Christian New Testament, okay? And we're going to look at the evidence that it even supports, or it gives, showing us just some of the climate of the day, okay? Looking at Matthew 2:1, notice what it reads. Now, when Yeshua was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of who? In the days of Herod the king. So here we have the notice of the political regime that was in power during this time. Who was it? Basically the Herodians, right? So when you take a look at it, in the days of Herod the king, behold, we understand this story, right? This supposed story. And long story short, when we take a look at this story, we find out that this same Herod, oh my goodness, listen, I keep telling you that my scroller goes nuts. Looking at Matthew 2:1, we notice here that Herod, he heard about these things. So this is what happens when a movement starts. The political regimes, the powers that be, they will hear about it, right? Now they can hear about it through social media. You have to understand that when it comes to the government and their interplay with social media, you better believe, don't kid yourself for a moment in thinking that the government is ignoring social media. They get lots of their leads from the social media networks, right? And so don't fool yourself, okay? Don't think that it's all fun. I know someone personally who put out a he was talking about, okay, let's just say this. He made some comments about the then president, and I want you to know, within moments, he received a knock on his door from the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Okay, very true. Governments now get their information from social media, right? As well as, we know there's some other things about the Patriot Act where they're also getting information from, right? But hey, nonetheless, they will hear about it and then they will respond. Well, in verse number 3 in Matthew 2 and 3, Herod heard about this, right? And notice what it reads. He was troubled. So this then became an issue when it comes to the politics of this regime, and when it comes to the political stability. This became a problem, okay? This new movement became a problem. And Herod was going to invest some time and some money, right, into dealing with this quote-unquote new movement. So he tries to call the wise men together here in verse number 7. And what happens is that, long story short, let's skip all the way down to verse number 14. In fact, verse number 13. And when they were departed, behold, the Malach of Yahweh appeared unto Joseph in a dream, saying, Arise and take the young child and his mother and flee into Egypt. Well, of course, hey, we know that this didn't really happen, but nonetheless, we're playing make-believe and saying, well, what if this did happen? But I want you to notice something here. He was supposed to flee into Egypt, but notice what is written in true form is that Herod was the issue. Now, I want you to understand that Herod is the enemy then of this movement. Herod is the enemy, okay, of this movement. I really want to establish that point. Look at verse number 14. When he arose, he took the young child and his mother by night, and they departed into Egypt, right? And I want you to notice something here. They're telling a big lie in verse number 15, but as we skip down to verse number 16, notice what it reads. Then Herod, when he saw that he was mocked of the wise men, was very angry, right? He was exceedingly wroth, and sent forth and slew all the children that were in Bethlehem and in all the coasts thereof, from 2 years and 2 years old and under, according to the time which he had diligently inquired of the wise men. And of course, they're going to tell another, falsehood here and say that, well, Jeremiah actually prophesied this, but this is not true. And I know that, even Christian scholars are saying that, well, there is no record of this ever even happening. And we have, this would have made national headline news, and it would have been talked about for quite a while, but there is no record of this, as well as there is no historical record of Yeshua ben Yosef by any of those who were documenting first century history of Palestine. Well, be that as it may, let's just continue with this understanding, with this narrative, that what is being put together here, what is being woven before us, is a story with a fabric that also yields evidence for us. It gives us an understanding, right? Because listen, it is very true that you cannot hide the truth. The truth will come out. You are not able, listen, even if you're making up a tale, even if you're making up a story, you still cannot hide the truth. Even that story will have some truth interlaced with it that you will not be able to deny, okay? So with that being the case, even though this is a story, even though this is a Christian New Testament falsehood, it still bears evidence, and it gives to us an understanding of something that is true and right in front of our face. So as we take a look then at this, we see that there are issues at hand where Herod Herod was actually an individual that was against this whole movement. Now, please keep in mind that this was a messianic movement. Now, let me just park there for a second. The reason why messianic movements were so important was because each and every messianic movement up until the time of Christianity was bent upon removing the Roman regime from the kingship of Judea. They wanted Rome out of Jerusalem, out of Judea, out of Israel completely, and period. Back during the day when, I should say, before the Roman occupation of Jerusalem, before that, there was a long period where the Maccabees, and we understand who the Maccabees are, right? Where the Maccabees actually brought about what I would like to call a pseudo victory. What do you mean a pseudo victory? Well, you have to understand that the reason why the Maccabees had to fight was because Hellenism was spreading, and the culture, the Greco-Roman culture, was spreading all over the world, and there were people. In fact, it was being pushed by a government. Now, let me say this, please. Let me say this, please. New world orders and movements are pushed by governments, not people. So when you see a person at the head of a quote-unquote movement that is bringing about a new social order, believe me when I tell you, that individual is not standing alone. That individual is not standing alone. That being the case, when you take a look then at Paul, who supposedly wrote over half of the Christian New Testament, who provided this foundation for Christianity. In fact, there are two individuals. Without these two individuals, Christianity would not exist. Okay? One of them is going to surprise you. Of course, it's the Apostle Paul. Now, you can have Yeshua ben Yosef there all you want, because if you pay attention to the words that it is believed that he originally spoke, he was for the law and keeping the testimonies, of course. We could go there to Matthew, the 5th chapter, right? We could also go to Matthew, the 19th chapter. We could go to the 17th verse and show you where his prescription for eternal life was to keep the commandments. Okay, now let me do this because I want to show you and give you the reason why I am a mythicist. Okay, what do you mean a mythicist? Well, listen, I do hold to the possibility that there was perhaps a messianic individual, someone who thought that he was a Messiah, right? Someone who, hey, let's get rid of the Romans. And of course, his mission failed, right? Because he was just a man. He was just somebody like many others who wanted to be the chosen one, the one who would rid the country of the Romans. This is why, listen, this is why names like Yeshua were very popular in the first century. They were sick and tired of the Romans, and they wanted them gone. So women were trying to have the deliverers, right? Just like in the movie of the Crumps, you see the woman saying, Hercules, Hercules. Well, back then they would have been saying Yeshua or Moshiach, Savior, because they wanted someone to deliver them from the Romans and from that Roman regime. They wanted, and so you had messiahs popping up literally all over the place. In one particular time, this was years before Yeshua ben Yosef would ever hit the scene. There were three different messianic figures that had brought armies to themselves, okay, that had brought armies to themselves, and they were fighting against the Romans. When I tell you that the fighting against the Romans, it was very expensive for Rome to fight these battles because they had to send men all the way from Rome. They had to get mercenaries. They had to, you had so much expense. And so Rome desperately needed to stop all of the militancy, all of the fighting, all the insurrections. Rome desperately needed to stop all that because it brought instability to the empire. So it was necessary for them to get ahead of the movement, just like they did in the civil rights movement, just like they did with other groups. It was important for them to get ahead of it and to steer it in the direction that they wanted it to go. That being the case, you can then understand why Rome would actually invest time and money in a completely different psychological campaign that did not deal with sending out soldiers and spears and feeding them and giving them gold or salt or whatever they paid them with. But you can understand why they would seriously invest in writing, putting out propagandistic literature, and throwing something into the mix that the Yahudi people would sink their teeth into, and give them the different definition of a Messiah, give them a different definition of the quote-unquote movement, and give them a different definition of what the Most High required of them. And that is what Christianity is in a nutshell. Let's get into it. Let's dig into it. Let's talk about it right here, right now. Before we go forward, there is one thing that I want to do. I definitely want to take a moment, and I want to have a word from our sponsor, which is Navi Beit University, excuse me. And let me do this. We're going to go ahead and hear from our sponsor, and we'll be right back. We're going to get into this. There are increasing numbers of Hebrew Israelites all over the world, from Asia to Africa, from Mexico to Germany. There are Hebrew Israelites that are coming together as a nation and as a family, and you are needed. You are needed to take your place as the educator of your families, your sons, your daughters. So we want you to enroll in Navi Beit University so that you can take your place in the kingdom. Now is the time to prepare to create Hebraically centered scholarly materials to educate others, to teach your family, to teach your sons, your daughters, to teach the young, to teach the old, and to bring them into the knowledge of the Most High. The Most High is gathering us together as He has promised. So enroll in Navi Beit University, connect with the administrator and the registrars, and enroll today for just $35 for a bachelor's per month, or $45 for a master's, or even enroll in the doctorate program. You can get a degree with a Hebraic focus at Navi Beit University. Hebraic education, undergraduate, graduate, and specialty courses. Hi, I'm Melky Uriel, and I'm excited to offer you a brand new course at Navi Beit Academy. One of the first courses that we're developing at Navi Beit Academy, and we're welcoming you. It's called the Hebrew Memorization Course, and perhaps you've been reading some Hebrew reference materials, and you note that the paragraphs are numbered by the Hebrew alphabet, as well as the verses. And you're wondering, well, how do I know which is which? If I want to go to a particular paragraph, how do I do that? You may also be wondering, well, how do I memorize the 10 Commandments? I want to be able to memorize the 10 Commandments and know them frontwards and back, and be able to recall them in order, and to know which commandment is which. As well as the Hebrew alphabet. I want to know the Hebrew alphabet and their numerical values from 1 to 400. I'm here to tell you that you can do that now. Now there is a course here at Navi Beit Academy where you will memorize the Hebrew alphabet from 1 to 22 and their numerical values from 1 to 400, as well as the 10 Commandments. All anyone will be able to have to do is to just either speak the number or the Hebrew alphabet, and you will be able to recall it. It's as simple as thinking of a number like 19, and 19 in the Hebrew alphabet is Kaf, which its numerical value is 100, and its paleographic Hebrew symbol is that of the horizon. Let's say 3, right? Just a random number. 3 in the Hebrew alphabet is Gimel, and its paleographic Hebrew symbol is that of the foot, and also its number is 3. But guess what? Since it's 1 through 10, number 3 would represent the third commandment of the 10 Commandments, which is, thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. Well, how am I able to do that? I'm able to do that because I've been using this system for some time now, and I'm willing to offer to you through this course at Navi Beit Academy. That's right. You can take your time. If it takes you a week, if it takes you a month, if it takes you 2 years, it's up to you to just study at your own pace. The only thing we ask you to do is just to dig in with us. And I'll even let you in on a secret. You can start the course for free. So thank you very much, and we can't wait to see you on the other side. All right, we're right back with you. Peace and blessings to you. So let's go ahead and get into this. Get your notebooks, your pads, your papers. I've got my favorite green coffee cup right here. Let's get into this right now. What is of notice and what is of interest? And let me listen, just before we get into some more scripture, I need to point some other things out to you, my brothers and my sisters. I need you to understand how the political regimes of the day, okay, I need to make 3 separate points, and I need you to understand me when I make these points, because they are very important, even for what we're talking about. One is that the way that individuals learned Greek, okay, now again, please understand, learning Greek was a part of the whole Hellenism, learning the Greek culture. You had to learn Greek not by someone sitting down and teaching you, right, how to speak the language. No, they actually learned Greek by reading the Homeric plays and Homeric philosophies. This is how they learned Greek. This is the way that they did it back in the day, okay? You didn't have some sort of learning course where you just, learned it from a very unbiased kind of position. No, they actually started you out by immersing you in the Greek culture as you're reading Homer. Now, please understand this. This is why when you take a look at the so-called Christian New Testament and you look at the writings of so-called, Peter, 1st and 2nd, are you kidding me? Peter was an illiterate fisherman, okay? If we take the Christian New Testament, if we take it to be a document that we can reference certain historical points, okay, there are inferences within the Christian New Testament that even back in the day when Yeshua ben Yosef was walking around, Peter was of age. In other words, Peter would have been considered middle-aged, perhaps he's around 45 or 50 even back then. Now, when you look at the late date of the writing of 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Peter, you're talking about another 40 to 50 years, if not 70 years, after the time of Yeshua ben Yosef. Now, wait a minute. So what you're saying is what I'm saying is that Peter would have been so old that, first of all, he was busy being a fisherman and making a living. He did not have time to sit by the roadside and start reading Homer and the Homeric plays and philosophies. He didn't have time to do that and to learn Greek. But yet, there are parts of 1st and 2nd Peter that are written in such a high standard of Greek. We know beyond the shadow of a doubt that Peter definitely did not write that. He did not write that, okay? But you have to understand, and this is point number 2. Point number 1 was that they learned Greek by immersing you in the Greco-Roman culture through the writings of Homer. Very important, right? Which means you had to literally go to university or school and spend time immersing yourself in the writings of Homer. Peter didn't have time to do that. James and John, the sons of Zebedee, didn't have time to do that, right? You had the so-called other apostles, those that would have made up the 12, okay, Matthias and Matthias and Matthew, and listen, they did not have time to do any of those things, okay? So it then becomes very suspect when we even look at the writings of Matthew, who Matthew uses illisms even in his book, for he says that one day Yeshua ben Yosef as he was, in the city, he came across one Matthew. What? Yes, he says that, well, yeah, he saw this guy named Matthew. Well, if this is Matthew writing, then, hey, he would have said, he saw me. That's where I met him, right? I'm Matthew, I'm writing this. This is where I met him. No, you can tell beyond the shadow of a doubt that these were not the so-called disciples or apostles or even eyewitnesses that were penning these so-called New Testament scriptures and gospels. So wait a minute. Here then is what we know. We know for a fact, and within the points that I've made, number one, you had to learn Greek by means of reading Homer, okay? And number two, we understand beyond the shadow of a doubt that when you look at the ages of those who were the supposed disciples of Yeshua ben Yosef, they were too old to even learn Greek. Now, I know. Some of you that are super Christians, you're going to be like, but they was with Jesus. They was with Jesus. Jesus taught, listen, you can say that all you want to, that Jesus taught them Greek, or that they somehow had supernatural learning, right? That they had supernatural learning because they were with Jesus. Well, listen, please understand, when you read the Gospels, you will understand that they didn't even know who Yeshua ben Yosef was supposed to have been. So if he was giving them knowledge, seems like the first thing that he would have given them is a revelation of who he was, right? In fact, Yeshua ben Yosef didn't give them any information. In fact, they even said to him, they said, well, now do you speak plainly unto us? Because they were like, man, dude, you keep with all these riddles, and we don't know what's up. We don't know what's going on. But when you look at the Christian New Testament, guess who knew who Yeshua ben Yosef was? Yes, demons knew who he was, right? But the Jews didn't. The Romans knew who he was, but the Jews didn't. So you mean to tell me that the Christian New Testament has demons knowing, has the Romans knowing, right? In fact, when the Roman centurion said, oh, I'm unworthy for you to come into my home, but oh, speak the word, speak the word. And Jesus says, I have not found, I have not found so great faith in all of his, man, are you kidding me? Man, what kind of setup is this? Are you kidding me? What kind of setup is this? So that any Roman, any centurion, you see, they always get the quote unquote, favorable mention, right? Not just the centurion, but even in the scriptures, it says, even in the Christian scriptures, it says, you know what, this centurion, he is worthy for you to do this thing. And look at Cornelius, right? Cornelius, now, okay, so you mean to tell me that Cornelius is so special, right? That God gives, let's deal with this Roman centurion. Let's deal with this Roman officer, right? So the writers of the Christian New Testament actually pin this propaganda so that Rome is always favored, okay? Rome is always favored in the Christian so-called Gospels, right? But no one sees a smoking gun there. No one sees the smoking gun because it's Jesus. Jesus is talking about Jesus. And so all they can see is JC, and they don't see the pen that is inscribing everything that they are writing. Okay? So, one, the Homeric writings were used to learn Greek. Okay? The so-called apostles were too old to learn Greek and to go through that process. Okay? My third point is that there are favorable mentions of Rome, and the flip side of that coin is that there are derogatory, negative, in fact, what some would call today is anti-Semitic mentions that increases as the Gospels move forward from Mark, Matthew, Luke, and then John. And it increases in hatred of the Jewish people, of the Yahudi, in that order. Okay, by the time you get to John, you have where they put in the mouth of Yeshua ben Yosef, where he says, it's your law. In other words, it's not my law, it's your law. And he says, the Jews, where Yeshua ben Yosef mentions the Jews as if he himself is not of the Yahudi. And so anti-Semitism and hatred for the Jewish people increases as you go through the Gospels and arrive at the book of John. Now, all of these things being in play, I need you to understand something. And I brought up those 4 points so that you can understand this. The Roman government was a propaganda machine back in the day. If you take a look at the works of Bart E. Ehrman, he has one particular book called Forged. And in this particular book, he highlights and he mentions that basically the governments of the day, in fact, it was a known practice to forge documents, and even the church itself, yes, the Holy Roman, listen, yes, they forged documents big time, okay? So what I'm sharing with you is this, and before we get into this, I need you to know that the first century, during the time that Yeshua ben Yosef supposedly walked around, the Roman government was investing heavily in propaganda, in literature, and actually psychological warfare using the scriptures and using propagandistic writings. Ta-da! That's what they did, okay? So don't think that just because you read it, just because it's an ancient manuscript, that it's somehow pure and holy. No, they were forging, and by the way, let me say this, the forgers were so slick, if you will, that they would even put in their forged writings, do not read forged writings. I mean, they would do this to throw you off the scent that, yeah, dude, you are reading. Look, all of this is forged. Man, I made this up, right? I made this up. And, wow, what's going on here? And so when you take a look at the fact that Rome and the so-called Roman Catholic Church, they were masters at propaganda. And it began, for those of you that love the Septuagint, it began with the Septuagint. Why do you think the Septuagint was actually written? Why do you think listen, these plans were put in place long before our day, long before even some of the documents that we consider to be ancient were even thought of. These plans of Hellenism and replacement theology and circumventing this and putting Hellenistic versions of this and that. Listen, these plans were brought about a long time before we ever even got here. Okay? Let me take a break and see if we have any questions or comments just before I move forward, because there's a whole bunch, so much that we need to get into. So let me do this. Yeah, we're going to get into that, a Black Mom. Yeah, Galatians 2 and 4. We're going to get into that in just a minute. Hey, Nikki's in the house. Nikki Ferrero. Peace and blessings to you, my sister. Also, Miriam Israel is in the house. Peace and blessings to you, my sister. Glad that you are here. Let's see. Did I miss anyone? Okay. Let's just go ahead and let's just keep this moving. That being the case, let's go ahead and deal with this, and let's tap into more scriptures, and let's dig deeper into this. So when we look then here at the supposed Apostle Paul, things get really interesting. Things get really interesting with him. What do you mean things get interesting? Well, now listen, let's point to something here, and we're gonna go to the book of Acts, right? And we're gonna go to the 9th chapter. Now, many of you know what happened in Acts, the 9th chapter. What happened in Acts, the 9th chapter? Let's take a look at it, and let's see what's going on here in Acts. In Acts, the 9th chapter, I want you to notice something here. Look at verse number 1. I'm going to begin reading. It says, and Saul, or Shaul, was his Hebrew name, yet breathing out threatenings and slaughter against the disciples of Yahweh, went unto the high priest. Now, here is the interesting thing. Since the days of the Maccabees, the offices of the high priest were always controlled by Rome. I need you to understand that. Rome and the given regime at the particular time controlled who was the high priest. Now, this is why there was such an issue and there was a separation, if you will, of the priest and the temple. In 175, roughly about 175 BC, there was great political turmoil in Israel, and those priests who were of the lineage of Aharon and Moshe, they ceased to be the priestly line. How did they cease to be the priestly line? Well, it all centers around the calendar, and this is what was going on. Antiochus, the Seleucids actually said, you know what? Look, we want you to use the lunar calendar instead of the solar calendar. Now, Israel had a tradition of actually calculating and using the solar calendar to calculate not just the Shabbats, but also the feasts, okay? And they had their own way of looking at the new moon, searching out the new moon, and finding out when the Sabbaths were going to be, and it was done in a way so that the Sabbath would always end up on the same days, okay? And the new moons were always on the same days. The calendar was 30 days, right? And so aside from those days, you had the months of the year, but you also had 5 then separate days that were outside of the calendar that were special days. And these were the days of what we now call the solstices. Well, the Seleucids said, you know what, man, forget about the way that y'all used to do it. Forget about the Enochian history. Forget about your connection with Enoch, and forget about that calendar system. Forget about how Enoch did it. Look, we're in power. And oh, by the way, if you don't know, might is right. Since I got the might, then I'm right. Otherwise, I'll knock you upside your head and kill your whole family. So go ahead and do this and use a lunar calendar. Well, the priest in the temple said, man, we ain't doing that, man. We've been doing it this way ever since the beginning. We ain't gonna do that. You crazy. Said, look, okay, you're out. So he kicked all of them out and he brought in his own regime. But what happened was when they left the temple, okay, in the women's court of the temple, there was a library where the writings and the copying tradition, where things were being copied, but also they would be compared and also stored there. The Seleucids demanded that the priests leave, that they get out, okay, but that they take all of their stuff with them except for the writings that were considered to, be a part of the temple and that belonged to the temple. In other words, basically a copy of the Torah, right? You could keep that, but all that other stuff, get rid of it. Now, this was the beginning of the library at Qumran, and that's how Qumran itself began to be, because the Zadokite priest caste left the temple, and that's where they were, okay? Now, wait a minute. So this all happened because, and I know I'm getting into a lot, but I'm going to go ahead and move down the road real quickly. So when you look at the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Dead Sea Scrolls basically shows you that there is a changing of these regimes. And as I said before, whenever you have a new world order or a change of regime, there is a government behind it. So when you take a look then at how the original Aaronic priests were cast out, and then another set of priests were brought in that were Roman sympathizers, okay? And you really had some on both sides of the fence that were siding with Rome, that wanted Roman rule and so forth and so on. They loved being under Rome. Well, you had a lot of sellouts back then. You had priestly sellouts back then. You had individuals that was selling out Israel for Rome because they were lusting after the culture of Rome. Hellenism and the rape of the Jewish culture or the culture of the Yahudi was so prevalent that you had men actually uncircumcising themselves, meaning that they were reversing circumcision, which is very painful. If you thought circumcision was, if you thought that was bad, if you thought that was painful, right, have you laid up for days, oh man, to uncircumcise yourself, man, that right there was painful, okay? And it was a interesting ordeal because they actually had to, okay, I'm not going to describe it. It was painful and it was crazy. That's what they did. But this is how much members of the Yahudi loved the Hellenistic culture. Now, along the way, you had individuals that were sold out, okay, sold out to the Most High, and they didn't want it. Well, it was these individuals that we would consider to be messianic, and that they're saying we need a leader to come and get rid of the Roman government and to just knock them out of the pocket, and so that we can have our own nation. And you had individuals that were yet sold out to Rome. So now, when you take a look at this, and you take a look at verse number 1, again, we're in Acts 9, verse number 1. Notice what it reads, and Shaul, yet breathing out threatenings and slaughter against the disciples of what they called the Lord, went to the high priest, which was put in place by the Roman government. So Saul is working for the high priest that was put there by the Roman government. This is important for you to understand. Meaning then that Paul is, even at this particular time, he is working for the Roman machine. Okay? And notice what it reads here. Verse number 2, and he desired him letters to Damascus to go to the synagogues, right? That if he found any that were a part of this messianic movement that want to be rid of the Roman government, that he might bring them bound unto Jerusalem. Now, I want you to notice, because here's where it gets a little spicy. Verse number 3, and as he journeyed, he came near Damascus, and suddenly there shined round about him a light from heaven, and he fell on the earth, right, and heard a voice unto him saying, Shaul, Shaul, why do you persecute me? Now, of course, this is, of course, fiction, but let's go ahead and read it. Okay? I want you to notice something here. It says, why do you persecute me, right? And it says, who are you? Basically, have a conversation. And supposedly, you know, again, as the propaganda reads, he says, well, I am Yeshua, whom you persecute, right? And he, trembling and astonishing, said, what will you have me to do, right? And then he says, arise and go into the city. And now, here is what becomes of interest. I don't know if you all caught it. I don't know if you saw it, but I have it highlighted right behind my back, okay? See that? See the highlights? What's being highlighted? What's being highlighted is the name Shaul, okay? We notice that as he continues in his Damascus experience, okay, I want you to see something here, because he's called Shaul, right? But as we continue forward, we find out that after he, you know, he gets prayed for and so forth and so on, his eyes, you know, and so that they go into a few other things. But when we get to Acts, the 13th chapter, hold on, let me go there. I want you to see something that is of notice. Notice what happens here, okay? I want you to see if you can find it. I'm going to scroll through this. Okay. Hold on. And I just want you to see something here, because there is a time where there is a transition that happens. Hold on, let me do this. I'm going to do this a different way. In fact, I may have scrolled right by it, but I want you to see it. Okay? So, he is Shaul, right? As we read further, we find out that there is something that changes with Shaul, where Shaul now becomes Paul. He becomes Paul. Okay? He becomes Paul. Now, listen, I'm just going to say this, right? I'm going to say this because I want you to notice something here. You remember in the Christian scriptures where after Yeshua ben Yosef baptizes James and John, he changes their name to Boanerges, which, by the way, is Greek, right? To sons of thunder. Boanerges. And there's also Aramaic as well, but long story short, he also changes Kepha's name to Petros, to Peter, right? So what's happening here is you notice that when there is any kind of a initiation, when there is a change, if you will, whenever there's a change, whenever there's any kind of initiation into a secret order, your name is changed, okay? Your name is then changed. So why then, notice if you will, isn't it interesting here that when we look at the Damascus experience, when Shaul comes out of it, notice Acts 13 and 9, then Shaul, who is also called Paul, he now has this experience where he's filled with the Holy Ghost, who in the first century was Sophia and was more so related to the paganistic gods, right? The pagan gods of the Romans. It was a bird, it was a feminine deity, if you will, right? That was called, and by the Gnostics call her Sophia as well for wisdom. And long story short, again, we're looking at a political regime here that is basically churning out propaganda by the boatload. But there's also something else that we need to understand, okay? Because this is highly suspicious. When we take a look at the way that the Roman government operated, when they took over a place and when they took over a people, we need to understand what happened. They wouldn't just do away with every ounce and iota of the culture. They wouldn't do that. What they would do instead is they would actually incorporate the gods, the deities, and parts of the culture of the people that they had just conquered. I need you to understand that, okay? And I'm sorry, I'm looking for something. Excuse me for looking away from you, but they would actually, on purpose, and it's called syncretization. They would syncretize or bring in the gods that the people understood to be their own deities, and they would work those into the religious culture, if you will. And as they conquered, okay, as they conquered, they would go ahead and they would simply incorporate the gods and the deities of all of these other individuals, and they would simply incorporate them. That's how they're able to take the gods of Egypt, okay, Asar, Aset, and make them to be their gods that they then would worship, okay, which basically that's exactly what happened. That's what the Greeks did. Well, as we take a look then and understand that as they went ahead and created the culture, okay, I don't know what's happening there, but long story short, okay, let's do this. They would actually engulf, if you will, the culture of the people. And so this is why they had such a big problem with Israel. Because Israel said, we're not having it. You want us to worship your emperor and sacrifice to the emperor? We're not having it. You want us to accept all these other gods? But please understand, Rome tried to take the gods of, or I should say, the Most High of the Jews, of the Yahudi, and incorporate that just like they had all of the others. We got to understand this. This is why they wanted to make sure that they had a foothold. This is why they wanted to make sure that they had the Septuagint. This is why they wanted to make sure that they wanted to have the scriptures, right? They wanted them because they were into taking the deities that people worship, right? And they were into actually putting their spin on it, engulfing it, and making it a part of their culture so that people would be okay with being dominated by them. Okay? Again, I remind you of a scripture in 1 Maccabees 3 and 48. It says, and they laid open the book of the law wherein the heathen had sought, excuse me, when the heathen had sought to paint the likenesses of their images. They wanted to manipulate and to taint the Torah, the book of the law, and they wanted to interject their images and their ideologies in the Torah. This is what they wanted to do, and the Christian New Testament is the success of that venture. They did not stop. They did not stop, but they succeeded with the Christian New Testament. So this is what we know. This is what we understand to be true. Let me just do a quick little recap. You learned Greek through Homer and by being immersed in the Greek culture, okay? We know that the disciples were too old to even start that process. Not only that, but they did not have time to even learn Greek the way that Greek was taught. This lets us know then that the writings of 1st and 2nd Peter are definitely false. 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John, definitely not written by John, right? Not written by the beloved disciple. But also, there's something else that you need to understand, that the propaganda machine of Rome was in high gear, okay? Let me prove that to you by going to Luke, the 1st chapter. And let me remind you of a verse that I've shown you before. Luke, the 1st chapter, notice what it reads. It reads, for as much as many have taken in hand, as much as many have taken in hand to set forth in order a declaration of those things which are most surely believed among us, those who are sympathizers to the Roman regime, to the Roman government, those of us who are sympathizing with them, this is what we believe. Those of us who accept their syncretization of religion and circumventing gods and creating their own versions of them, those of us that believe among us like them, even as they were delivered unto us, they told us to teach them, they told us to put these forth, right? Which from the beginning were eyewitnesses and ministers of the word. Now this is, okay, I'm not even going to go into that. But notice what he says here in verse number 3. It seemed good to me also. Basically, because everyone was doing it, it seemed good to me also, having had a perfect understanding, right? It seemed good for me. So basically, he's writing unto this cat named Theophilus, which, by the way, is someone that is either Greek or a Hellenistic Jew, okay? We know this from the name. This is a Greek name, right? And so, again, this is something that we understand was happening in that day because of the Roman propaganda. But now, wait a minute. Let's get back to this point. Because even though there was lots of propaganda, I need you to understand that part of what the Hellenistic system did, or the Hellenizing machine of Rome did, was, again, they took the religious structures of everyone that they ever conquered, and they used that, and they added that to their system, right? And they began to evolve. But guess what? Before they came to the Yahudi, they had already stopped by Egypt and pilfered and taken the knowledge that was in Egypt and taken the information, built the library in Alexandria, and was from there on taking the information, right? Taking the books, taking what the ancient Kemetic scholars had written down, and they took their gods and their systems and their pantheons, and they also took their mystery system. They took the mystery system of ancient Kemet, which is why you get the growth of Gnosticism in the 1st century proper, right? I mean, people still love it today, but in the 1st century, Gnosticism was like, man, that was the end thing, right? But wait a minute. It is in the mystery systems and in Gnosticism that you go through these different kinds of transformations where you kind of like the Philosopher's Stone, you're evolving as a person, you change. And so in that, even as the elements so-called change, where you're trying to take lead and make lead to become, gold, right? Notice what you're doing. Its name is lead because it's one thing, right? But when it goes through these transformations, you can then rename it as gold because you've transformed or transmuted it from lead into gold. This is kind of like, if you want the backdrop, that is the backdrop behind individuals being baptized, becoming changed, and then their names being changed. Okay? Their names being changed in order to highlight or represent the newfound evolution of that individual. Okay? Okay? And what it is it's a, if you allow me to say it this way, it's a bionic system, meaning that it is a synthetic system of growth or transformation that mimics what the Most High did. If you notice, the Most High began, quote unquote, a kind of progression and evolution, right? He began it with Adam, but not only that, we also see it with Abraham. Abraham was first called Abram, and Sarah was called Sarai. Well, what happened? Notice what he said. He said, you know what? I'm going to return. I'm going to return in the course of a year, and by that time, Sarah about to pop out a baby, right? She's about to pop out a unit. Well, if you notice, after the Most High said that, and by the way, he changed his name, right? He says, I'm changing your name. From that moment forward, when the Most High changed Abram's name from Abram to Abraham, and Sarai, from Sarai to Sarah, there was something that was going on in the both of them that was transformative, right? Which, let me just go ahead and say this. The Most High didn't send a spirit to impregnate Sarah. He said, no, this is the way I move. This is the way I work. I'm going to have her husband be revived in his system. And by the time that system of rejuvenation is done with him, it's also going to be done with her. And guess what? They're going to get together the old-fashioned way, the way that I made it. So everything that took place, let me just stop here for a second. Everything that took place between Abraham and Sarah, if you can imagine, right? They in the tent one night. Okay, I'm sorry, but let me just go here for a second. They're in the tent one night. All of a sudden, man, Abraham is feeling a little bit special. He feeling a little stronger than usual. He feeling his oats. He feel like, man. And then all of a sudden he look at Sarah, and Sarah looking good, man. Sarah looking better than ever. Sarah is his wife, and Lord have mercy, she must have bent over to get a pop. Man, I bet you Abraham was just like, hey, I've been feeling fine. And so next thing you know, here is Abraham and Sarah experiencing all of these emotions and stuff, right? All of these feelings, right? Hey, they were married. Hey, they were fine. They could get away with it. But guess what? That was a move of the Most High working on Abraham and Sarah, and the transformative process began not just by him blessing them, right, and empowering them to do that, but the name change showed that there was something transformative going on within them. I mentioned all that to say that when we come back here, I know that was comical, but this is why I said it, so that when we come back here and we take a look at the fact that Saul is now being called Paul, there is a transformation that has taken place. There is a transformation that has taken place. Okay? And so when you see this and understand this, and understand how the mystery cults work, and the fact that Rome took all of the knowledge that they could get, and in the midst of paganism and Gnosticism, they intermeshed that all together, and with them pulling all these things in from other religions, right, and making it all a part of their culture, this is what Rome did all the time. So we see here then that by Paul now being he was already working for the Roman government, right? Now we see that he is transformed here, and now he's called by a different name. Let me do this because I know that there's got to be, I know there's got to be questions and comments. Let me go ahead and go over here and let me, Joshua Penny said, you are killing me right now. And yeah, they were married, right? Miriam Israel. My sister says, ain't nothing wrong with it. They were married. And that's what I'm talking about. There's nothing wrong with that. That was pure love between two individuals that was like, hey, you know, Been a long time. You know what I'm saying? You're looking kind of good there, Sarah. And so next thing you know, yeah, they are having a child, right? And my sister Jacqueline E. Bugg says that the importance of the Hebrew name is critical for your destiny, and it is, right? It is definitely. So take a look then here. Oh, by the way, peace and blessings to my sister Mariska Parker. Bless you, sweetheart. Glad that you're here, fam. I think I did get everyone. Yep. Let's continue. So that being the case, then let's get back into this and let's understand something here. There is definitely something going on with Shaul, who becomes Paul, and who actually now has a change of plan. He's got a change of destiny. He's got a change of agenda, right? And we begin to understand some things about him as we continue to read. Now, I'm going to have to go down the home stretch here because I know I'm getting into this and it's already been some time now, but let me continue. As we take a look at this, I want you to see some things, okay? Let's stop over here because I want you to see something here. Something is happening, and now let me highlight this so that you can see where I'm going. This is Acts the 12th chapter, okay? And I want you to see this because now in the beginning, we showed you in Matthew the 2nd chapter how the Herodians were always against this messianic movement because the Herodians were trying to protect the Roman government. They were trying to protect their regime, right? And in fact, it's put in the narrative when Yeshua ben Yosef was supposedly before Pontius Pilate that some of the reason behind him being betrayed by the Yahudi was that the then council, the Sanhedrin, said, if we don't do something, then the Romans gonna come and they're gonna take away all our stuff. They're gonna take away all our religion, our toys, everything. They're gonna take away. And basically, what he was saying was, man, they're gonna stop this good living. Because we making bank over here off this. They about to stop that. Look, we're not going to let that happen. So what we see here then, as we continue forward, is when we take a look at Acts the 12th chapter, okay? Notice what it reads here now. About that time, Herod the king, see, the Herodians were always against the messianic movement, okay? Stretched forth their hands to vex certain of the church, and he killed James, the brother of John, with the sword. Killed James, the brother of John, with the sword. And because he saw that it pleased the Yahudi, he proceeded further to take Peter also, right? Then were the days of unleavened bread. And when he had apprehended him, he put him in prison and delivered him to the 4 quaternions of soldiers to keep him, intending after Easter, after the worship of Astarte, to bring him forth to the people. Peter, therefore, was kept in prison, but prayer was made for him by the church, and so we move forward. And we see here that basically Herod was always against the Messianic movement, okay? And not only was he against the Messianic movement, but he and his regime and his family, they were always against it. Now, why do I mention that? Why is that such an important point? Okay? That's an important point because when you look at Paul's affiliations, you're going to find out something very interesting. All right? But just before I go there, talk about Paul's affiliations. In fact, let me do this. Since I mentioned it, let me go ahead and just tidy up that point, okay? When you look at Paul's affiliations, let's do this. And let's just check out a couple of things that the Apostle Paul says concerning his affiliations, okay? When we look at Romans, the 16th chapter and the 10th verse, I want you to see something here. I want to see if you guys can spot it. I want to see if you can find it. If you can spot it. I want to see if you can spot this. Does anyone see anything interesting in verse 10 or in verse 11? I keep saying that I'm going to get some Jeopardy theme music when I ask these questions. Okay? But let me just share this with you. Okay? I want you to notice something here. There's someone that the Apostle Paul, there's someone that he salutes. Okay? And notice what is read here, okay? When we take a look at this, we see the name Aristobulus. Who is Aristobulus? Who is Aristobulus? I'm glad you asked that question. Now, again, the Apostle Paul, who writes in this book of Romans, he is writing and he is addressing Aristobulus. Well, who is Aristobulus? Paul refers to Aristobulus, who was King Herod Agrippa's brother. What? Yes. Wait a minute. I just showed you from Matthew 2 all the way through to Acts 12 and onward how, yes, the Herods and the Herodian regime hated the Messianic movement. They hated anything that was going to threaten the Roman government. But now we see something interesting about Shaul, who become Paul, in that he himself now is addressing individuals that are members of the Herodian court and family. Okay? Aristobulus was King Herod Agrippa's son. His son. Okay? So wait a minute. I got to ask the question. How do you get to be someone who is supposedly, I'm just this Jewish rabbi, right? I'm a Pharisee. How do you get to be someone that is so close to the Herodian family that you are addressing the son of King Herod? You're addressing his son, right? Like you know him, like y'all tight, like you just had coffee, right? How do you get to be that tight with your own enemy? Because, surely, right? The Apostle Paul, he's supposed to be for this whole Messianic movement, right? How do you get to be so tight with the Herodian family, right? And they're the enemy who've been trying to not only kill the movement, but kill other individuals who are a part of your movement. How do you get to be that tight? How do you get to be that tight? Well, you see, no. You see, because, see, Aristobulus had, apparently Aristobulus, he was a Christian. Okay? If you hold to that, then you have to understand, because even, okay, and let me go here for a second. Let me go here, and then I'm going to climb down off the soapbox, but let me go here for a second. Even for you to say the Christ or a Christian puts the Hebrew Messianic movement in a Hellenistic genre or frame of reference, you're putting a Greco-Roman frame of reference on a Hebrew movement, which means it's already tainted. It's already tainted. Don't talk to me about no Christ. You can talk to me about a Mashiach and whether or not Yeshua ben Yosef was a Mashiach. Answer would be a flat no, and I can show you that in scriptures. But I don't want to hear anything about a Christ. You can take that garbage with you and dump it on your way out. I don't want to hear anything about a Christ. I'm not into the Hellenistic culture. I know. I'm speaking English right now. I know, right? Back when I was a Christian, yes, I was studying Greek, and yes, I was reading the Christian New Testament, and yes, it's in Greek. I know. But now that we know better, right? Now that we know better, we live better. And so I don't want to hear anything about a Christ. No. That's why I don't read the Pentateuch. I don't read the Pentateuch. No, I read Torah. That's what I read. I don't read the Old Testament. I read the Tanakh. Oh, but that's just semantic. No, it's not semantics. The Old Testament is different than the Tanakh. The Old Testament has been manipulated, books changed around, chapters. Listen, I don't have time to get into all that right now, but the Christian Old Testament is not the Tanakh. So I don't read the Old Testament like that. I don't embrace I embrace the Tanakh. Okay? Now, because many of you may not have a Tanakh, I will teach and show you things out of the quote-unquote programs that I have that are the Old Testament, only because I know that many of you do not have a Stone Edition Tanakh or even a JPS Tanakh. I know that you may not have that, right? I'm trying to reach you where you are so that we can move forward. But as far as a preference, as far as what I stand for and what I prefer the Tanakh, and I prefer to have conversations that talk about a Messiah, a Mashiach, not a Christ. Okay? You can have that garbage. So even as we say Christ here, we're talking about the Greco-Roman rendition of what a Messiah would be. Please understand that. Again, Rome syncretized, took over every religion and culture that they came across, and they put their own spin on it, they put their own bias on it, and what do you think Christianity is? That's exactly what Christianity is. It is a Roman invention. Okay? So he mentions Aristobulus. Again, I asked the question, how do you get to be so tight that you're actually addressing King Herod's brother when King Herod was the one that was trying to get rid of all of those who were in the Messianic movement, right? This is like, for those of you that don't understand, this is like like Malcolm X writing a letter and saluting J. Edgar Hoover and saying, "Hey, let's play golf sometime." Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? But wait a minute, there's more. There's more. Notice what also it reads here in verse number 11. Salute Herodian. What? Salute Herodian, my kinsman. Herodian is my kinsman. What? Do you see that? This is also King Herod Agrippa's brother. This is another brother of King Herod. Okay? Actually, it's Herod of Chalus, who was King Herod Agrippa's brother, another ruler. Okay? Again, I ask, how do you become so tight with the very enemies of your movement that you're able to salute them and you're able to call them your cousins and your kinsmen, right? Oh, well, no, see, he meant that in Christ. Man, please. He said my kinsmen, right? So he's counting them as being a part of his family. And when you take a look at this, then it's suspect. It's very suspect. Okay? Now, let's move forward because I've got something else to show you. I've got something else to show you that's also suspect. Okay? So let me just go into the scriptures without even listen, because let me go ahead into this. Okay? We're going to go to Acts 23 and 15. Okay? And in fact, for the sake of a little bit of continuity, let me go to verse number 12. Okay? And when it was day, certain of the certain of the Yahudi band together and bound themselves under a curse, saying that they would neither eat nor drink till they had killed Paul. Okay? They wanted to shish kebab Paul doorknob dead because of what he was doing. And there were more than 40 which had made this conspiracy. They had conspired to get rid of Paul. Right? Now isn't it interesting that whenever you have COINTELPRO movements, even like this ancient one that we see in the Christian New Testament, isn't it interesting that somehow, some way, there's always the plot of an assassination associated with it? Whether you're talking about attempts on Huey P. Newton's life or Fred Hampton, which they did succeed, right? It's interesting that whenever you have COINTELPRO movements, again, they are designed to neutralize the movement, okay? But notice here, they said, we're going to kill Paul doorknob dead, okay? But now, I want you to see this. Verse 16, and when Paul's sister's son heard of their lying in wait. So wait a minute. Paul had a sister who had a son who was somehow able to hear all this, right? And I want you to see what goes on here. When Paul's sister's son heard of their lying in wait, he went and entered into the castle and told Paul. So wait a minute. So evidently he's someone that has access to the castle. He's someone that can just walk up into the castle without any issue. Maybe he had papers. Maybe he was someone special. I don't know. Was he a member of the family? Was he a member of the Herodian family? There is a possibility, but let's continue. Then Paul called one of the centurions unto him and said, bring this young man unto the chief captain, for he hath a certain thing to tell him. Let's just keep going for a second. So he took him and brought him to the chief captain and said, Paul, the prisoner. Wait a minute. You mean to tell me that a mere Jewish prisoner has the ability to change or to get to the chief captain and demand that someone see the chief captain, right? You mean to tell me that a mere prisoner has the ability to affect the chief captain's schedule? Really? Because he's got a certain thing to tell you. So Paul is saying that not only is this information important, but by the way, the chief captain should hear this. I don't care what the chief captain is doing. Let the chief captain hear this right now. So now notice verse 18. So he took him and brought him to the chief captain and said, Paul the prisoner called me unto him and prayed me to bring this young man unto thee, who hath something to say unto thee. Then the chief captain took him by the hand. You see all this kind of cloak and dagger. You see all this I spy stuff, you know. Then the chief captain took him by the hand and went with him aside privately and asked him, what is that thou hast to tell me? Now, I want you to take a look at this. I want you to take a look at this because this gets just a little bit deeper right here. Verse number 20. And he said, the Yahudi have agreed to desire thee that thou wouldest bring down Paul tomorrow into the council, as though they would inquire something of him more perfectly. Verse number 21. But do not thou yield unto him, for there lie in wait for him of them more than 40 men, which had bound themselves with an oath that they will neither eat nor drink till they have killed him, and now are they ready, looking for a promise from you. So now in verse number 21, Paul the prisoner is using his nephew to tell the chief captain what to do. But don't you yield to them. Okay? I gotta say it like I've seen on TikTok. Don't you find that suspicious? Don't you find that suspicious? That a mere prisoner is telling the chief captain what to do? A Roman chief captain at that? But let's continue. Let's continue. Let's take a look. He says, but don't you do it, right? Now, look at verse number 22. So the chief captain, notice, so the chief captain then let the young man depart and charge him, see that thou tell no man that thou hast showed these things unto me. Again, cloak and dagger, spy information, right? And he called, now notice verse number 23, this gets really trippy right here. And he called him 2 centurions. And you know, at first when you look at this, you're like, you know what, okay. He's just going to have 2 soldiers kind of like hang out with Paul, make sure nothing happen to him, right? Right? No, that is not what's happening here. He called him 2 centurions, saying, make ready 200 soldiers to go to Caesarea. Wait, we're not done. And horsemen 70, 70 horses and horsemen, and all the king's horses and all the king's men. And we're not done yet. And spearmen 200. So wait, I'm sorry. Okay. If this is supposed to be one little old Jewish man, you mean to tell me the Roman government is going to, for whatever reason, spend money, because it costs money for them to take this venture. He had to pay them, he had to provide for them, their horses needed feed, the men needed feed, the men would need a place to stay once they got... Listen, this was an expensive endeavor, but wait a minute, you mean to tell me that one little old half-bald-headed Jew is being escorted by about 470 men? Are you kidding? Really? 200 of them on foot with spears? 200. All of that for one man. So you mean to tell me that this is just somebody that's just... He's just preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ. No. Because of Paul's affiliation, because of his name change, because this is an individual who now is listen, the Roman government is going, I mean, they are sparing no expense to save his life. You would think that Paul was almost like some sort of magistrate or some sort of, even a king. I mean, would a king have such an escort? Really? But this is exactly what Paul had. He had about 400. Man, they were 470 deep. All for one man. Right? And so they got them, and they provided a beast for Paul to ride on, right? This is equivalent, my brothers and sisters. This is equivalent. Imagine. There being someone who's just a normal individual, right? But all of a sudden you see coming down the highway 470 government vehicles. 470, right? And in the middle, you got this one car, and this dude is in this car just, following everybody else. You mean to tell me that that's not an important government official? You mean to tell me that that's someone that has no connection to the government at all? Are you serious? 470? But let's keep it moving. I'm almost done. But notice this. You're also going to learn something about the chief captain, right? Because notice, after he even got Paul some transportation, notice what else he writes. He says, he writes a letter to Claudius Lysias, and this is what he says. To the most excellent governor, Felix, sendeth greetings. So the apostle Paul, the chief captain, was actually the governor Felix. Wait a minute. So Paul has the ability to affect the governor's schedule just like that? Really? And he's nobody but this Jew that's been preaching. Really? Notice what it reads in verse number 27. This man was taken of the Yahudi and should have been killed by them. Then came I with an army and rescued him, having understood that he was a Roman. Y'all see that? Now, keep in mind that this is the same individual who, I mean, number one, it's very suspect when you think about it, right? It's very suspect. I mean, I'm just saying, I look at it and I see it and I'm like, man, no. I got a problem with that. There's no way that this is just an ordinary individual, okay? But there's something else to be considered here, because when you look at who they are protecting, right? Let's take a look at this real quick. Notice notice how he operates, okay? And this is also evidence against the so-called Apostle Paul. Verse number 19. And I'm sorry, verse number 18. I got to read that. In fact, I'm sorry. Again, take a look at who this is. For I do the verse 17. For if I do this willingly, I have a reward. But if against my will, a dispensation of the gospel is committed unto me. In other words, the reason why I'm going through this is because, man, I got a gospel that was given to me by revelation and stuff. Look at verse number 18. What is my reward then? Verily, that when I preach the gospel, I make the gospel of Christ without charge, that I abuse not my power of the gospel. For though I be free from all men, yet have I made myself servant unto all, that I might gain the more. What is he talking about? Let's just look at it in verse number 20. And unto the Jews I became as a Jew, and we might imply, though not really a Jew, because he's saying, hey, to the Jews I became as a Jew, that I might gain the Jews. I ain't really no Jew, but I act like a Jew when I'm with the Jews so that I can gain them. What is that? Listen, family, what is that but a con man? What is that but someone that has no integrity? What is that but someone who is trying to work a confidence scheme on you to get you to believe in them and confide in them and to believe in them, and then only to, for their own means and for their own gain? I'm almost done. Stick with me just a little bit longer. But notice what it reads here. To them that are under the law, hey, I pretended like I was under the law too. Shoot. I had to fool them that I might gain them that are under the law. To them that are without the law, hey, please. I mean, if they were, homosexuals, I act like I was a homosexual too, right? To them that are without the law, as without the law, being not without the law to God, but under the law to Christ. Man, what in the frog legs does that mean? That I might gain them that are without the law. So in other words, I'm pretending big time to be whatever I gotta be in order to, basically the ends justifies the means. That's what it is. The ends justify the means. The ends justify the means, and so what? Okay? To the weak I became as weak, verse 22, that I might gain the weak. I am made all things to all men, that I might by any means save some. So in other words, I will do whatever I have to do to convince you, just so that you will believe what I'm saying, so that you will receive of my revelation, right? Notice what he says here in Romans 3:7. For if the truth of God hath more abounded through my lie, what? If the truth of God hath more abounded through my lie unto his glory, why yet am I also judged as a sinner? The way I read this as well, I mean, he says he lied, but it was for his glory. So why are you saying that he's a sinner? He's like, fall up off me. I did it for the glory of God, right? So when we take a look at who this individual is and the things that he was teaching, because here is something of interest. Now, let me do this. Let me do this. I'm going to check on you all in just a second. I'm going to get your questions. I'm going to get your comments, right? But I need to hit this for just a second, okay? Here is another reason why the so-called Apostle Paul is so suspicious and why I believe that he was an agent of the Roman government. This is why. When you go to Romans, and again, the book of Romans, really? When you go to Romans, right, I want you to see something here that's absolutely amazing. Because what the Apostle Paul is teaching here is he's saying, hey, y'all be good. Y'all be good to those that y'all just love on them Romans and love them. Y'all just better be good to them. Notice what he says here. Verse 17, recompense to no man evil for evil. Now, we know in the Tanakh, we know in the Torah, it says, eye for eye, cut for cut, wound for wound, stripe for stripe, burn for burn. We know that it says eye for an eye, right? The crime, the punishment must meet the crime in magnitude. It has to be a just exchange of punishment for the crime, right? That's what eye for an eye means, right? And they literally would do eye for eye, okay? However, what the Apostle Paul is saying is, recompense to no man evil for evil. So wait a minute. So when something is done evil to you, especially by a government, he's saying, don't do nothing. Don't do nothing. Don't do nothing. Love them. Provide things honest in the sight of all men. So even if they're your enemy, you just go ahead and give them all your business, right? Tell them everything that they want to know. And verse 18, if it be possible, as much as lies within you, live peaceably with all men. So just get along with people, right? Verse number 19, dearly beloved, avenge not yourselves, but rather give place to the wrath, for it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith Yahweh. Verse number 20, therefore, if thine enemy hunger, feed him. If he thirst, give him drink. Now, please, keep in mind, you got to keep in mind who was the enemy of the Yahudi at this point. It was Rome. Rome was the enemy of the Jews. They had been fighting for years, for centuries. Okay? So when he says, hey, love your enemies, right? He's saying love Rome. If your enemy, which is Rome, hunger, feed the Roman. Therefore, if thine enemy, which again was Rome, feed the Roman, right? If he thirst, give him to drink. For in doing so, thou shalt heap coals of fire upon his head. Be not overcome of evil, but overcome evil with good. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. I mean, but wait, we're not done. We're not done. Look at 13:1. Let every soul be subject unto the higher powers, for there is no power but of God. The powers that be are ordained of God. Do you see what this is saying? Paul, who evidently is a Roman operative, is saying the reasons why the Romans are over you, you Jewish people, because I'm a Roman. The reason why they're over you is because it's God's will. It's God's will. And now, notice what he's about to say. Let every soul be subject unto the higher powers, for there is no power but of God. The powers that be are ordained of God. For whosoever therefore resisteth the power of the government that's over you, resist the ordinance of God, and they that resist shall receive unto themselves damnation. Oh man. So now, if you don't obey the Romans that are over you, you're going to be damned by God. For rulers are not a terror to good works. They're not trying to harm any of you that are good, but unto evil. So if you do these uprisings for a Messiah, that's evil. Man, are you kidding me? Wilt thou not then be afraid of the power? Do that which is good. Obey them. Be kind to them. Feed them. Do that which is good for them. Go ahead, be good to them, and thou shalt have praise of the same. Look at this bull right here. For he is a minister of God unto thee for goods. Oh, how splendiferous. For he is a minister of God unto thee for good. Are you kidding me? The Romans were raping the little virgins of Israel. They were raping the wives of men. They would make you carry their gear for miles. It was a law that you had to carry it for a mile, and you could not say no. But guess what? Yeshua ben Yosef said, if they say unto you, go 1 mile, go 2. Man, are you kidding me? And people can't see who's behind the writing of the New Testament. Are you kidding me? It's all, listen, it's setting Rome up to be obeyed, pay tribute. They have it in the mouth of Yeshua ben Yosef, called Jesus by the pagans. Give unto Caesar that which is Caesar's. In other words, pay him tribute. When they didn't want to do that. But now the Apostle Paul is saying, hey, obey them because they're the ministers of goodness. Oh man, are you just going to do so good? But if thou do that which is evil, be afraid, for he beareth not the sword in vain, for he is the minister of God, a revenger to execute wrath upon him that does evil. My goodness. Listen, this is propaganda at its best. This is propaganda at its best. And look at this, for verse 5. Wherefore we must needs be subject, not only for wrath, but also for conscience sake. For this cause pay ye tribute also, for they are God's ministers, attending continually upon this very thing. And then he caps it off by saying, render therefore to all their dues, tribute to whom tribute is due, so pay Caesar. Custom to whom custom is due, carry their gear and stuff for them, right? Fear and honor to whom fear and honor is due, right? You just go right ahead. I mean, you talk about propaganda. This is propaganda at its best, and it all comes out of the mouth of the Apostle Paul. It is known that Paul did write this book of Romans, even though there are other books that are doubtful. Others wrote in his name and tried to write under his genre. Romans was written by Paul, and what we just read was a crock. Okay? And this proves, beyond the shadow of a doubt, that Paul is writing propaganda for Rome. Therefore, I conclude Paul was a Roman operative. All right, let me go ahead and get your questions. And yeah, a black man says that was more security than modern presidents. You're right. You are 100% right. I'm telling you it is amazing, right? It is amazing because they also put in the mouth of Yeshua ben Yosef, resist not evil. Are you kidding me? And people cannot see that this was done on purpose to stop those messianic Yahudi from revolting against the Roman government. Can't you see that that's what this is? Can't we see it? All right. Okay, a black man says that he tried to call, but the line is busy. Thank you for letting me know. Let me do this, and let me just let me make sure that it is available. Okay. All right, all right, all right. So I think that okay, I'm going to ask that you try. I'm going to ask that you try again. Okay, please try to reach me again, and let's see. It should. I want to make sure. Go ahead and try to reach me right now, and we'll definitely try to make this happen. Okay, we'll definitely try to make this happen. Okay, go ahead and try it if you will. In fact, let me do this. Let me try to reset the line real quick. I am resetting the line, and then you can go ahead and call in, Black Man. Okay. All right. He says still busy. Hold on. I'm resetting it. I'm resetting it. Let's see. Let me make sure that we are. Let me do this. I'm going to straighten this out. Give me just a second, and let me take us into another moment where we hear from our sponsor, and then we'll get some phone calls. All right? We'll get some phone calls. Be right back. There are increasing numbers of Hebrew Israelites all over the world, from Asia to Africa, from Mexico to Germany. There are Hebrew Israelites that are coming together as a nation and as a family, and you are needed. You are needed to take your place as the educator of your families, your sons, your daughters. So we want you to enroll in Navi Beit University so that you can take your place in the kingdom. Now is the time to prepare to create Hebraically centered scholarly materials to educate others, to teach your family, to teach your sons, your daughters, to teach the young, to teach the old, and to bring them into the knowledge of the Most High. The Most High is gathering us together as He has promised. So enroll in Navi Beit University, connect with the administrator and the registrars, and enroll today for just $35 for a bachelor's per month, or $45 for a master's, or even enroll in the doctorate program. You can get a degree with a Hebraic focus at Navi Beit University. Hebraic education, undergraduate, graduate, and specialty courses. Hi, I'm Melky Uriel, and I'm excited to offer you a brand new course at Navi Beit Academy. One of the first courses that we're developing at Navi Beit Academy, and we're welcoming you. It's called the Hebrew Memorization Course, and perhaps you've been reading some Hebrew reference materials, and you note that the paragraphs are numbered by the Hebrew alphabet, as well as the verses. And you're wondering, well, how do I know which is which? If I want to go to a particular paragraph, how do I do that? You may also be wondering, well, how do I memorize the 10 Commandments? I want to be able to
memorize the Ten Commandments and know them frontwards and back and be able to recall them in order and to know which commandment is which, as well as the Hebrew alphabet. I want to know the Hebrew alphabet and their numerical values from 1 to 400. I'm here to tell you that you can do that now. Now there is a course here at Navi Bait Academy where you will memorize the Hebrew alphabet from 1 to 22 and their numerical values from 1 to 400, as well as the Ten Commandments. All anyone will be able to have to do is to just either speak the number or the Hebrew alphabet, and you will be able to recall it. It's as simple as thinking of a number like 19, and 19 in the Hebrew alphabet is Qaf, which its numerical value is 100, and its paleographic Hebrew symbol is that of the horizon. Let's say 3, right? Just a random number. 3 in the Hebrew alphabet is Gimel, and its paleographic Hebrew symbol is that of the foot, and also its number is 3. But guess what? Since it's 1 through 10, number 3 would represent the third commandment of the Ten Commandments, which is thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. Well, how am I able to do that? I'm able to do that because I've been using this system for some time now, and I'm willing to offer to you through this course at Navi Bait Academy. That's right. You can take your time. If it takes you a week, if it takes you a month, if it takes you 2 years, it's up to you to just study at your own pace. The only thing we ask you to do is just to dig in with us. And I'll even let you in on a secret. You can start the course for free. So thank you very much, and we can't wait to see you on the other side. Hi, I'm Melky Uriel, and I'm excited to offer you a brand new course at Navi Bait Academy. One of the first courses that we're developing at Navi Bait Academy, and we're welcoming you. It's called the Hebrew Memorization Course, and perhaps you've been reading some Hebrew reference materials and you note that the paragraphs are numbered by the Hebrew alphabet as well as the verses. And you're wondering, well, how do I know which is which? If I want to go to a particular paragraph, how do I do that? You may also be wondering, well, how do I memorize the Ten Commandments? I want to be able to memorize the Ten Commandments and know them frontwards and back and be able to recall them in order and to know which commandment is which, as well as the Hebrew alphabet. I want to know the Hebrew alphabet and their numerical values from 1 to 400. I'm here to tell you that you can do that now. Now there is a course here at Navi Bait Academy where you will memorize the Hebrew alphabet from 1 to 22 and their numerical values from 1 to 400, as well as the Ten Commandments. All anyone will be able to have to do is to just either speak the number or the Hebrew alphabet, and you will be able to recall it. It's as simple as thinking of a number like 19, and 19 in the Hebrew alphabet is Qaf, which its numerical value is 100, and its paleographic Hebrew symbol is that of the horizon. Let's say 3, right? Just a random number. 3 in the Hebrew alphabet is Gimel, and its paleographic Hebrew symbol is that of the foot, and also its number is 3. But guess what? Since it's 1 through 10, number 3 would...
All right, we are back, and we've got the phone line straightened out. I tell you, I've been having a lot of technical difficulties today, but hey, go ahead and try to call in, and hey, we'll go from there. If you tried to call in before, you can now call in. Let me do this. I want to make sure that I get all the comments and all the questions. Let's see here. Okay. Yeah, I agree with you, Joshua and Penny. So many lies and so little time. Yes, so many lies and so many, so little time to address each and every one of them. Um, yeah. So, long story short, um, let me see if as I look at some of these other. Jacqueline E. Bugs asked the question, how can we get a copy of the Tanakh? Again, you can you can go through Amazon and all right. Okay, we got a call. All right, caller, what's your name and where you from? Hello?
Hey, Maury, this is A Blackmon, and
Hey.
I'm calling. Hey, how you doing? I'm calling from the Midwest over in Kansas.
Okay. Well, peace and blessings to you, my brother. I'm glad that you're with us. And yeah, man. Yeah. Talking about Paul today. So, what's your question or comment?
Well, my comment wasn't really about Paul.
Okay.
I just had a question. I wanted to see if you can help me resolve something.
Sure.
So, yesterday I looked through 7 different Bible versions. And now 6 of them say one thing, but the 7th says something totally opposite. So I was looking at Genesis 2 and 2. 6 of those versions say Yahuwah rested. Well, they said he ended his work on the 7th day. But the other version, the one version, said he ended his work on the 6th day and rested on the 7th. So that's a stark contrast. And so I just wanted to know if you can give some insight on that, and I'll go ahead and hang up.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I will address that. Okay. So let me pull up the scripture that he is referencing. He references Genesis 2 and 2, Bereshit 2 and 2. And I wanted to ask him what were the versions that he was actually looking at. But let me do this. Let's take a look at the scripture and let's read it, and then let's go from there. As we take a look at the scripture, it reads, Genesis 2 and 2, okay. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. Verse 2, and on the 7th day ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the 7th day from all his work which he had made. Okay, so now let me give you this for a second, because there's 2 different schools of thought or conventions at work here. When you look at the different translations, here's what you're looking at. You have to understand that, okay, in Judea, there were some huge shifts and swings that happened to the culture because of the Babylonian exile, and Shabbat was definitely one of those. Those who were the Palestinian Yahudi held to the Shabbat being from evening unto evening. Okay, now looking at it from evening unto evening, okay, that means that when the sun went down on Friday, right, that means that the Shabbat would begin. Now, not the Shabbaton, but the Shabbat would begin at sunset. All right, so it is the beginning of Shabbat. It is a part of Shabbat day, right? But it is not the Shabbaton. For the high Shabbat, which is what we're in right now, the Shabbaton would be when the sun rose. It is the day, it is Sabbath day, which in the Shabbaton, that's where the special activity, or in this case, the special prohibition would take place and be enacted on that day. It's different for different feasts. It's different for different Sabbaths, okay? Of course, the regular Shabbat is that we do not do any work. Now, it does so happen that you're able to prepare in the beginning of Shabbat. Is just that the Shabbaton, when the sun rises, no work can be done at all. Until then, it is the time of preparation. Now, the Babylonian convention is that the day begins the Shabbat day. So in other words, the Babylonian method is that when the sun rose, then that is the beginning of the Shabbat day. Okay, that being the case, some may say, well, okay, he rested on the seventh day, meaning that within the 24-hour period that began at sunset the day prior, yeah, he finished the work, but then he rested on the other part of Shabbat, which would have been the Shabbaton, when the sun rose and until the time that the sun went down. Yeah, he rested, but then, of course, now, we have the Shabbaton and we do it the way that we do it. Others would look at the Babylonian convention and say, well, it was true and true the seventh day under the Babylonian convention, meaning that the day begins when the sun breaks through the darkness and the sun begins to shine. Okay. Again, there are two different conventions at work here. One has a Babylonian bias or influence, and the other is of the Palestinian. So this is why different versions will kind of lean one way as opposed to the other way. So thank you for that question. And if there's anyone else that want to call in and ask a question, you can feel free to do that at this time. I'm going to also check for any more questions and comments. Oh, you are welcome, a black man. You're welcome. Excuse me. So, all right. Okay, all right. I'm trying to see if I missed any questions at all. Okay. Looking at the questions and comments, I'm going through everything. I want to make sure that I don't miss anything. I want to give shouts out to all of you that are here. Peace and blessings to you. I'm very glad that you are here. My brother George Evans, my brother Burton Paris, of course, my day one. Peace and blessings to you, my brother, also to George Evans, and as well to Joshua and Penny, to Mariska Parker, the lovely Mariska Parker. My family's in the building. To Jacqueline E. Buggs, who's also in the building. Yes. To a black man who is also in the building. And to Nikki Ferrero, who's also in the house. Did I miss anybody? Did I miss anybody? There was someone else. Yeah. Where did she go? Yah only Hebrew. Bless you, my brother. There we go. Miriam Israel. Yes. Very glad to have you, sister. Very glad that you are with us. And I think I've gotten everyone. So, hey, let me do this. I don't know if there are any other questions or comments. I'm going to leave it open for a few minutes to see if we do. And one comment comes to us from Jacqueline E. Buggs, who says, I was just learning about the SALT covenant. Can you share anything about it? Also, Miriam Israel, I'm here just watching on my TV. LOL. She says, I'm here just watching on my TV. Okay, so the question then is, one of the questions that comes to us from Jacqueline E. You know what? I'm going to address this. But, man, I thought y'all would have something to say about Paul, man. I thought y'all would have something to say about Paul. Ain't nobody, unless y'all like, look, I knew he wasn't no good anyway. I knew that Negro wasn't. I mean, I don't know why I expected somebody. Well, you know what? I expected pushback from the Christians. That's what it was. I expected there to be some pushback from the Christians who might want to, because they revere Paul, and they need the writings of Paul to substantiate their quote unquote, belief, their doctrine of, salvation by grace. They need that desperately. They need Paul. They need his writings. They need his understandings. And here's what gets me, all right? I am going to address this, but here's what gets me about the whole Pauline doctrine issue. if you follow what Yeshua ben Yosef said, things that could be attributed to him, such as, hey, if you will have eternal life, keep the commandments, right? If you go by what he said, and I'm talking about what is attributed to him in the earlier days, I mean, you would see a Hebrew, right? You would see a Hebrew who I believe has messianic aspirations, or I want to say, militaristic, nationalistic, and you would see someone that would be. I mean, think about it for a second. He had Judas Iscariot, which was a part of the Sicarii, which means that they carried a sword, right? And because they carried a sword, they would deal with you. They were like, hood assassins, and they would take care of you. They were very nationalistic, and he had him. He also had others in his. Now, of course, just by the personality alone, Peter was boisterous and, like he liked to fight, like he liked to scrap, right? You also had James and John, who were very, powerful men, very powerful personalities. And you look at these individuals. Right? And I mean, part of Judas's stance was I believe Judas was really trying to cause a revolution, if you will. I believe that Judas was just trying to bring a confrontation that would bring about change. Now, that's just me. But man, when you take a look at it and when you understand it, it's like Yeshua ben Yosef was a militaristic, messianic kind of a guy. But that image has been taken. There's been things added to his image that again become Roman sympathizing, and it becomes so much of what it was never intended to be. Okay, it was never intended to be. Let me do this, and let me go into a couple of things here, because my sister wants to address the covenant of salt. So let's do this, if you will. Let me go to a couple of scriptures here, talking about the covenant of salt, and let's do that really quickly. I'm not going to go into this exhaustively. But I will go ahead and do this. I will mention these two things, and then we'll move from there. Leviticus 2, and we're going to begin at 13. Okay. Notice what it reads: "In every oblation of thy meat offering shalt thou season with what? With salt." You're going to season it with salt. Okay. "Neither shalt thou suffer the salt of the covenant of thy Elohim to be lacking from thy meat offering. With all thine offerings thou shalt offer salt." Okay. "And if you offer meat offering of thy first fruits unto Yahweh, thou shalt offer the meat offering of thy first fruit, green ears, and corn, so forth and so on," right? But if you use meat, it's got to be with salt. Also, too, if we in fact, let's do this. Let's go to Ezekiel 43 and 24. Notice what it reads as well. "And thou shalt offer them before Yahweh, and the priest shall cast salt upon them, and they shall offer them up for a burnt offering unto Yahweh." Okay? So the covenant of salt, the covenant of salt is basically making sure that the offerings that are presented, the burnt offerings that are presented, that that they're accompanied with salt. We know what salt is. Salt is a preserving. It helps to heal wounds. It helps to codify wounds. Salt is healing, but it also brings about the necessary minerals that we need within our bodies to keep us whole, to keep us healthy, so forth and so on. Basically, the covenant of salt is an addition of, if you'll allow me to put it this way, the preserving nature of not just the sacrifice, but those who are made righteous by following the law, statutes, and the commandments of the Most High, and those that obey Him. We have a preserving nature, which can be seen in the discourse between the Malachim and Lot, right? And even Abraham, if you will. Abraham, of course, was interceding for Sodom and Gomorrah, and says, "Look, okay, 50, right? If you don't find 50, you're gonna just bomb the place. I know, but man, 40, like really, like if 10 are missing, really, and you got 40, and so he ends up getting it all the way down to 10, right? And of course, the Most High says, okay, if there are 10, I will spare the city." This is what we're talking about. This is a portrait of not just the salt covenant. So it's sacrifice with the enactment of preservation, okay? So it's not just that, but it's also the standing of the righteous, the righteous interceding, which is what Abraham was getting at. See, Abraham interceded for Sodom and Gomorrah, but the 10 righteous there would have been interceding or preserving the city from being destroyed and delaying the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah if 10 righteous had been found there. That's why you look in the scriptures and it reads that though Daniel, Job, and was it Daniel, Job, and Elijah would be there, he says, I would still bomb this place. I would still, I would still judge this city. Even though Daniel, Job, and, hey, if they were there, man, I would still have to, I might pull them out, but man, I would bomb this place so bad. So the righteous have the ability to preserve, right? And so again, symbolically, that is instituted in the sacrifice as being salt, right? So we have that preserving ability. He says, look, when your meat comes, when you offer meat unto me, make sure that there's salt with it, because basically that's what you are, that's what you do. And when you obey me, when you follow me, hey, it is preserving, right? And so with you being obedient unto me, it has a preserving ability, if you will. Let me see if there are any other questions or comments. Let's see here. I think my brother George Evans says, let's see here. Okay. Okay, Jacqueline Bug says, I divorced from Paul a long time ago. Okay, high five, sister. I tell you, I knew you were smart. I knew you were smart. Okay, so, yes, thank you. Blackman says Paul had two different versions of his conversion story. When you look in Acts 9 and when you also look in Acts 22, there are two different versions. One, the men, saw but didn't hear, but then in the other one, the men didn't hear, didn't see. So, yeah, he's got two different versions, which again makes it very suspicious of whether that is really true. Listen, I know when something deep and meaningful happens to me spiritually, I remember it. I'm just saying, I remember it. So, long story short, man, it is, again, very suspicious. It is suspect that you can't even remember your own conversion story, right? You can't even remember your own conversion story. That is suspicious. And I do believe that Paul was an operative. We have always thought that Paul was a madman. And I mean, you know what they say, there's a thin line between genius and insanity. I mean, Paul, I think, yes, Paul had some issues there. Miriam Israel says, I posted this on my page and captioned some fighting words, so don't be surprised if I tag you if they get in an uproar. Hey, that's all right, sis. That's all right, Miriam. Hey, we'll stand there. If we have to stand there with our backs to each other and duking it out in front of us with whoever steps in front of us, hey, we'll just make that happen, right? My sister Jacqueline E. Bug says, "Hey, he was so fork-tongued," and he was. Now think about this for a second. Even when Paul says, "You know what? If by my lie, basically God was glorified by my lie. Why are you looking at me like I'm a sinner? What's wrong with you? So what? I lied, right? I lied for His glory. So if you have to deceive someone into salvation, I just don't think that's the way to go, right? I don't abide by that. That's not the way to go. One of the things that's interesting is, again, the Apostle Paul said, "Hey, man, I'll do whatever I got to do, or I'll be whatever I got to be, in order to win somebody to my point of view." And that's just what he said. I'm not making it up. That is just what he said. George Evans says, "I've been reading the Dead Sea Scrolls. I've read the Thanksgiving hymns or scrolls, a collection of messianic proof texts, a commentary on consoling passages in Scripture, and a few others." I would love to have. Maybe I should do. We could have some coffee and talk about that on one of our Shabbat mornings. Okay, that might not be a bad idea. Uh, my brother Bergen Perry says, "Put Paul on a U-Haul, y'all. A Pharisee indeed. Do what I say and not what I do." So the Apostle Paul is, okay, please understand, fam, there are so many Christians that go by what Paul said instead of what supposedly the Christ has said. They call themselves Christians, but listen, one of the first persons they're going to go to is not Yeshua ben Yosef, called Jesus by the pagans, but they're going to go to Paul. Paul said, right, that all things are good to be received. Paul said that we redeemed from the curse. Paul said, and again, I've shown you that Paul had some very serious political connections that were not friendly to the movement. Okay? So, long story short, hey, I do not subscribe to Paul. As my brother said, yeah, you can U-Haul Paul if you want. So, all right. So, hey, I've opened it up for questions, and I think that, long story short, hey, we have gone the distance. I appreciate you hanging out with me. I did not intend to be on this long, but peace and blessings to you. I think I've addressed all the comments and questions. So at this time, listen, I want you to enjoy the rest of your Shabbat. Please enjoy the rest of your Shabbat. Do continue to meditate and to worship and to magnify the Most High. I certainly am going to do so, and I would admonish you to do the same. Peace and blessings to you. I love you, my family. So glad to see you. So glad to be with you. So glad to hear from you. And I want to say that it has been a joy teaching you on this morning and discussing the issue at hand. That being the case, I think that what I will do, unless there are any other, no, there's no more questions or comments. So, hey, we're going to go ahead and we're going to bid you adieu. Peace and blessings to you. Love you all, and we'll talk with you soon. So, you can always reach me. Last thing I want to do, just before I go, I want to take you to my website where you can reach me, you can email me, and my website is Malkia Uriel Live. Okay, Malkia Uriel Live. And, oh, hey, I'm looking like twins. So if you go to Malkia Uriel, that's MALKIYAHURIEL.live, L-I-V-E, you will be able to reach my website. And on this website, long story short, You can contact me up here. You can contact me. You can learn a little bit about me, right? And of course, this is just an introductory site, and it has on it everything that we are involved in, from the radio station to our YouTube channel to the Hebraic Living Institute. The Hebraic Living Institute, it is a counseling and coaching forum for Hebrews. I am a certified business and life coach. I've taken everything, all of my skills, all of my abilities, and I use them for our people to help build the nations and to build families. Aside from this, there's also other things that I'm involved in and other things that I do. The Remnant Nation Live is the main hub site. You can go there. Of course, there's Navi Beit University, which is the educational platform that is the sponsor of Shabbat Morning Coffee. And this Brew Book Live, I haven't gotten around to unplugging it, but this is going to be, we're going to have to kick this to the curb and maybe address it at some other point in time. So that being the case, you can contact me. You can contact me through the website, and there are some videos on the website. And there's a little bit about me, about my history. So, hey, you're able to connect with me, and yeah, that's the site. So feel free to connect. You can email me your questions and comments. That being the case, fam, I want to say peace and blessings to you. I love each and every one of you. And hey, it's been wonderful. Jacqueline E. Bugg says, well, fam, Shabbat Shalom. George Evans says, peace and blessings to all of you, and continue to have a peaceful and blessed and wonderful Shabbat. We will do that, my brother. As well as Joshua Penny says, it has been wonderful being with you today. Peace and blessings to you, and we love you, and I love you right back. Shalom, and we're praying for you and your family. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, and I keep you all in my prayers as well. That being the case, hey, we're going to go ahead and bid you adieu. Peace and blessings to you. And we are, hey, I guess we're out of here, right? I guess we are out of here. If I can find, yeah, there we go. All right. Shabbat Shalom.
Malkia Uriel. See, I have this day set thee over the nations and over the kingdoms, to root out and to pull down, to destroy and to throw down, to build and to plant.